some information, and if you have questions that I can't answer, I can certainly try and point you in the direction to find out where you can get that information. This session is going to take about 60 minutes. We're going to do some activities together. And by the end of the time, I'm hoping that you'll be able to know 5 key messages about dementia. That you'll be able to know what dementia is and what Alzheimer's is and the difference between the two. And also how to effectively communicate with someone who has dementia. So those are kind of the 3 goals for tonight. And then at the end, we're going to ask you to take a small action about what you can do to be more dementia-friendly in your life. And I'll explain more about that later on as we go. So when I say the word dementia, what word comes to mind that you think about? Forgetfulness? I'm going to write them down because I'm forgetful. What other words come to mind when you think of dementia?
Old age.
Old age? What else?
Confusion.
Confusion, yeah.
Loss.
Loss.
Brain.
I didn't hear you.
Brain.
Brain, yes.
Repetition.
Repetition. Did you have another one?
Emotional.
Yeah.
Loss of ability to do daily tasks.
Okay, we got a good list going. So, forgetfulness, old age, confusion, loss, brain, repetition, emotional, losing the ability to do daily tasks. Are those positive or negative images for the most part? They're kind of negative, so we're hoping to maybe present a little bit more hope in talking about dementia, of what we can do to people, help with people living with this disease, and not focus on the negative aspects of it so much. So dementia is not a specific disease. It's a collection of symptoms that define a brain disorder. So, and usually it affects people's memory and thinking severe enough to limit their everyday activities, like Beth was saying. Alzheimer's disease is just one kind of dementia, but it is 60 to 80% of the cases of dementia. So that's what people know the most. It's my birthday today, so I thought I turned my ringer off, but no.
Well, happy birthday.
Might get a few phone calls like, my ringer I thought was on. So the other types of dementia that you may have heard of are frontotemporal, vascular, dementia with Lewy bodies. So those are some different types of dementia. Parkinson's also has a type of dementia that can be associated with it. But the goal of Dementia Friends, which is what we're a part of today, is to increase understanding about dementia and to reduce the stigma about dementia. So, what is Dementia Friends? It's a global movement. It actually started in the UK, and they're always just a little bit ahead of us, the United Kingdom, on coming up with programs to, especially social service programs, It's now in the U.S., and Minnesota is the first state in the U.S. to have a Dementia Friends group. So Minnesota is always on the cutting edge too. In the state of Minnesota, there's been 23,000 people that have seen this presentation. So they keep track of how many people actually are taking part in this. And the goal is for everyone to understand those 5 key messages, which I'm going to talk about, and how it affects people, and how we can make a difference. People with dementia need to be understood, and we need to have them supported in our communities. And so by becoming a dementia friend, you can be a part of that effort. So what's normal aging versus Alzheimer's? Leroy said old age, not necessarily Alzheimer's. So we'll talk about the 10 different ways that you can, 10 ways you can determine if someone has Alzheimer's. So most of us age. We have physical signs of our aging. We have gray hair, lots of it. Maybe we have to start wearing glasses. Maybe we get up in the morning and we're not quite as nimble as we used to be. It takes us a little bit longer to get going in the morning. Those are all, am I in your way? No. Oh, I just want to make sure. Those are all symbols of aging, and that's normal aging. Dementia is when cognitive or thinking gets confused, and we even might not remember names as well as we used to, but we will eventually remember them. Anyone with dementia will lose names and not be able to remember to bring them back. What are the changes that people, that you could identify if someone's got either Alzheimer's or it's just normal aging? So the first one is that as for memory loss that disrupts daily life. So not being able to remember names, places, not being able necessarily to even remember how to put together a grocery list, the things that were considered common tasks, that memory loss disrupts people's daily lives. What's normal aging is sometimes just forgetting names but remembering them later, or an appointment and remembering that you had it. That's part of normal aging. But memory loss that disrupts your daily life is a sign of Alzheimer's. The next challenge is planning and solving problems. So a person who may have been able to, at work, be able to run a budget, may have been able to plan events, those kinds of things, that people start to lose their ability to do that with Alzheimer's and with dementia. So they might not be able to follow a recipe anymore. They might not be able to even figure out how to mow the lawn, which could have been a task that people were used to doing all the time. So what's normal aging is when you make occasional errors when balancing your checkbook, which can happen to any of us. The third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or leisure. And that can be not remembering how to practice your favorite sport, not remembering, keeping track of the passage of time, not remembering dates and places, not remembering the rules of a favorite game might be another, something that they've played over and over and over again, and suddenly they can't remember the rules of the game. So normal aging is knowing that sometimes we need help setting the microwave reset after the time has changed, or how to record a TV show, which I always need to be reminded of how to do that. So the fourth sign or symptom is confusion with time or place. Dates, seasons, people may not get dressed wearing the bright coat because they may forget that it's winter, or forget to put a hat on. They sometimes get short with people because things are not happening immediately, because their sense of time gets skewed from what's waiting and what you need to, is going to happen later in the day. And sometimes they may just forget how they got to a certain place, or may not be able to drive to a spot that they've been able to drive to long before. So what's normal is being confused about the day of the week, because we're so busy. We can't keep track of the days of the week. Shannon, what did I do?
You got it.
There it is. Okay. The next early sign or symptom is trouble understanding images or spatial relationships. So people may have vision problems with Alzheimer's. One of the most common ones is that this is pretty good carpeting. It wouldn't confuse someone to be walking on this carpeting. But if there is a lot of a pattern to it, it could be confusing for people to step over it or step into it. Or they may just see blackness and be afraid to step, like a threshold, to be able to step over that. Judging distance is a problem. Also having narrowed perception also gets in the way of people, of course, continuing to drive safely. And what the most common aging problem with vision is really cataracts for most folks. The next sign or problem would be and I'm not doing so well at speaking, new problems with words in speaking or writing. And this can take place in a couple of ways. People may forget where they are in the middle of a conversation. They might repeat themselves numerous times in a conversation or numerous times within an hour. They may struggle with vocabulary, not being able to get the words out that they're trying to find, or to replace a word with something new, like to call a watch a hand clock, because they just couldn't come up with the words to come up with what that was. And so what's typical with normal aging is all of us, sometimes it's not being able to find that right word. The seventh sign is misplacing things that are losing the ability to retrace steps. So we all have had that happen when we go into the middle of a room and we think, now why did I actually come in here? But we can usually remember it after we go back and retrace our steps. But with Alzheimer's, people will go into a room and not be able to do that piece of retracing their steps. It just doesn't come back for them, and they're lost. And the other thing that I heard of, especially in facilities, is people often accuse people of stealing because they're misplacing things. And so if you're in a facility, quite often that happens, that you're constantly looking for things that have just been misplaced and not stolen. The eighth sign is decreased or poor judgment. And this is when telemarketers can really have their way with people who have some sort of memory dementia problems, because people just don't have good judgment about having someone convince them to give away money. Then also, sometimes people don't take care of themselves. They may not change clothes very often, or they start not being able to groom themselves in the same way, or the way that they have before. And with normal aging, we all make a bad decision every now and again.
Could I make a comment on this, on the bad decisions? A good friend of mine got a call that Leroy got a few weeks ago from Wells Fargo default department, saying somebody was getting into your, anybody else here had that call? And a good friend of mine, and she's dealing with a husband with Alzheimer's. So she thought it was Wells Fargo, gave all her information, and they had just sold a house back in Michigan, moved to Minneapolis,
Oh my, I don't know.
and they had all that money in the account, it's all gone. And she said, how could I have been so dumb, but I know the stress she's under.
Yeah,
And
that's what I would say too.
and I mean, she was a very, when she worked, she had a high pressure job and very, very good at it. And a lot of it was dealing with people with Alzheimer's. Well, she doesn't have Alzheimer's, but she trusted them and they sounded legit, and Leroy had that call one day.
I had the weirdest phone call on my phone from the weekend. It was a call from Abbott Northwestern Hospital, which I don't know why I was getting this phone call, but they said, if you've received another phone call from Abbott Northwestern Hospital, please disregard, because like someone was trying to get information from the hospital or something. So these scams are just out there like crazy. You gotta be so
And
careful.
the latest one here is, you have not paid your electric bill, your electricity will be shut off in 30 minutes. That
Oh my
happened to
goodness.
us last week, so I called Co-op Power and Light because ours is automatic, we paid, and they said, you're the 5th person to call us today.
Wow. So those scams are huge.
They are.
So we can all be taken in by those. Everyone has to be careful, definitely. The ninth sign is withdrawal from work or social activities, and I see this happen where people who used to be active with hobbies and social activities, seeing people, just stop seeing people, because it's either too confusing to see people, because they're trying to, their memory isn't as good as, they know it isn't as good as it was, and so they then become more isolated, because they're less social. So what's normal is that we sometimes get tired of all those social activities that we do, but we still continue to do them. And the 10th sign is a change in mood or personality, and this is often mid to late stage Alzheimer's, where people's may become confused or suspicious or fearful, anxious. People can become angry pretty quickly sometimes because of the confusion. They may be easily more upset at homes than at their home or with friends, and they may not go out again because they're out of their comfort zone of what they're used to being around. So what we do to function is we usually develop specific ways of doing things, and then we become irritated when our routine is interrupted. So that's the normal way of dealing with that confusion. So any questions or thoughts about those 10 signs? So the next activity let me pass these around. And I hope you kept your pen or pencil. So you can work in groups or you can work by yourself, and I want you to connect this one sentence from column 1 with the sentence in column 2. And there should be in your handout a space to do that. Yeah, this is what it looks like. Right? So complete the sentences. A normal part of aging, right, that's the first key message. So what do you think we mean by this?
That perhaps it can be in, controls by diet, exercise, socialization.
Right. That dementia is a disease of the brain. It's not something that's considered a normal part of aging, that everyone is going to have memory loss and forgetfulness that that will be noticeable or that may be accompanied by mood changes. So it's a set of symptoms that are caused by a brain disease, which I sort of gave you the answer to the next one. Dementia is caused by
Disease of the brain.
disease of the brain. So does anyone know the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's is a type of dementia.
Right,
Dementia is a broad category.
right. Dementia, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. Dementia is a combination of symptoms that causes disease of the brain. And the most common type of dementia is Alzheimer's. So that's why you hear that the most often. Alzheimer's changes the chemistry of the brain and it causes brain cells to die. So that's what the disease actually does inside your brain. Number 3, dementia is not just
about having memory problems.
right, exactly, about not having memory problems. That's the third key message. And I think I've said enough about memory loss. We know dementia can affect the way people think and speak and do things, so it makes it harder for them to plan. But there's a lot that we can do to help. There are more things that are being done to help people with memory aids and to boost someone's confidence as they're starting to have memory loss. Number 4, it is possible to have
Good quality life.
exactly good quality of life. And even though it may sound bleak talking about it, it can be surprising what people can maintain and learn ways to accommodate. And many people just need support, and they need folks supporting them and know how to be able to continue to do the things that have made it important, that have been important in their life. And then 5th one, there's more to the person than the dementia, right? So it's just like having cancer or diabetes. People live with dementia just as well as they live with cancer and live with diabetes. Good job. At the end of today's session, I'm going to ask you to think about what you can do differently in your day-to-day life that may help people affected by dementia. So to help your thinking, I'm going to just pass around these little things to prompt you as you're thinking about this, how you might take some action. So some examples are, if you know someone in your community, offer to cook a meal or visit them, or visit the caregiver who's busy taking care of the person with dementia. If you see a person struggling in the grocery store, maybe help them. be patient with people who might take a little bit longer than need. Or you can tell someone what you've learned about dementia tonight and encourage them to become a dementia friend also. So as I said before, dementia is a disease that damages brain cells, and this damage interferes with how brain cells communicate with each other. And when the brain cells can't communicate, a person's thinking, behavior, and feelings can be affected. And I'm going to draw your attention to the bookcase. I'm going to tell you a little bookcase story. This is a visual in the handout. So everyone's brain is affected differently by dementia. Let's imagine a 70-year-old woman who has dementia. Now imagine there is a full bookcase beside her and we're surrounded by bookcases. Each book inside represents one of her skills or memories. On the top shelves are the memories of facts and her skill for thinking in complex or complicated ways. For people with dementia, the top or outer part of the brain is damaged first. Skills like math, language, keeping one's behavior in check are all done in this part of the brain. And in our bookcase story, these skills are also books on the top shelf. When dementia rocks the woman's bookcase, the books on the top shelf begin to fall out. And the woman may not remember what she ate for breakfast, or what she had to pay for items at the drugstore anymore, or that someone came to visit her that morning. Emotions and feelings are lower on the bookcase, just like they're in the lower or inner part of the brain. So this is the instinct part of the brain. So feelings like love and happiness, frustration, and sensing respect reside there. So as dementia continues to rock her bookcase, the books on the lower shelves stay there for a much longer period of time. The bookcase story helps explain different thinking skills and memories and the effects of dementia. Facts and complex thinking will fall away quickly, and emotions and feelings will stay longer. So let's return to the woman for another example. So her daughter comes to visit her and her mother doesn't remember her name. What will she likely remember though about her daughter?
How she feels about her.
Exactly, that there's love, that there's a connection there, that there's feelings, and that support. If the daughter comes and they have an argument, what might be the feelings that get tripped up there? So she might focus on the anger and the hurt that occurred because of that argument, rather than focusing on that this is a person that she loves and cares about. So as dementia continues, the woman might lose other thinking skills. As we talked about, she may no longer be able to manage her finances, enjoy activities, and I think the key is that dementia affects everybody differently. Everyone has different books on the bookshelf that fall off, and at different times and at different rates. So I love this metaphor of just thinking about what books are still available to people to utilize, and what books are not available for them to access. So dementia affects the factual and emotional parts of the brain, but it affects the top part. Faces, names, dates, places are affected first, and facts are easily forgotten from 1 hour to the next. But the lower part, where the emotions are managed, stay in place much longer.
Will they, like, if they forget something, is it like gone forever, or does it? can
For the
they
most
recall?
part,
Okay,
it's gone,
okay.
yeah. People will have, they may use memory aids to try and help them, so people may use Post-it notes or, use some kind of thing to remind them what something is called or the name of a person, so people will try and utilize some things to help them remember. Yeah. The other skills that get affected are planning and judgment. And planning is something that we do every day. We plan from the minute we get up in the morning to before we go to bed at night. And a person with dementia may not be able to even remember how to make cookies, even though that was one of the best things that they did and they were well known for. Judgment is what keeps us safe and in interacting with people. It's that the censor for what we say to people, what we might actually be thinking and saying about people, and that judgment seems to go out the window also when people have dementia. And how that cross-section is described in the disease is, you can see this is a healthy brain, and this section here, and that's when Alzheimer's disease has started to pack away, taking away parts of the brain. So that's what that looks like. So I'm going to have you guys do a planning activity. So you can pair up or do 3 or 4 in a group. So you have some space on your page right here. So I'm going to have you write down the task to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm not going to tell you anything more than that.
Supposed to,
So there's a lot that's needed to do this planning activity. So your heart needs to function, your brain needs to function, you need to have movement, you need to have vision, you need to have hearing, you need to remember how to sequence things, what the sequence, and so can you see how a task as simple as making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich might be confusing for someone with dementia? They might get distracted.
Or frozen.
Or frozen, exactly, like not sure where to go next. Exactly. So how difficult or easy was this task for you?
It was exhausting.
It was exhausting.
It was easy for me.
For those of you that worked together, did you agree, or did people were adding other steps, or? Yeah. And if someone with dementia was struggling with this task, what might you do to help them?
Slice the bread. I think only bread. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean.
Probably wait until they've completed the first step you did, and then like kind of coaching them all the way.
Right, so that's one suggestion, to coach people individually, maybe get out the peanut butter and jelly for them as a first step. Coach them through, it's a good suggestion, coaching them through the different steps. Anybody else have any suggestions?
Well, I'm going through this with my sister, as I told you before, and it's interesting, the things which were so normal for her, like, she doesn't know how to bake anymore. Scared me. One day she had her oven on, and I went in and she had a paper bowl in there. She was cooking something. And I don't know if the kids have disconnected. They probably have. She does know how to use her microwave, but she does have Meals on Wheels now, so she doesn't do that sort of cooking. But she likes to go grocery shopping, and it doesn't take, I run in and I get what I need. She enjoys going up and down the aisles and looking, and you might spend an hour in the little mom and pop.
You can do that with your husband at Menards. So as a caretaker,
requires a lot of patience,
incredible amount of patience. Just
all the time.
all the time, right? Because the task won't come easily necessarily.
And Diane, I have a quick question. When you think about this, like someone who knows that at some point they're probably capable of these things, how do you help them in a way that doesn't make them feel that they are less than for not being able to do it easily anymore?
Right, so breaking things down into tiny steps for people, assisting where you think you can assist, encouraging people to where you think they're still able to do part of the task. And as Muffy said, that takes time, and that takes patience,
And
definitely.
you know, it's, and not all tasks, at least what I observe with my sister, cooking is a lost skill with her. But her house is spotless. Absolutely spotless. You couldn't find dust in her house. And not only that, each time you go, she has a different table decoration on her table. Now fall is.
So
it'll be
she's
fall.
seasonal too.
Yeah, she's seasonal. It's just interesting but she was a domino player. They loved to play dominoes, and her granddaughter wants to play with her. She doesn't know how anymore. It's gone.
So one of the book about dominoes fell off the shelf.
Fell off the shelf. I have to remember that. So you have to tell her daughter that, and give her a smile anyway.
So the other, the last piece that we're gonna talk about is communication. And these are just some important steps to remember when communicating with people with dementia and starting a conversation. So come in front of people, especially if they're experiencing some vision problems, especially if you could be right in front of them. And if you're standing and they're sitting down, go down to their eye level and speak directly to them face to face. Call the person by their preferred name or the name that they're used to being called by to get their attention. So, hello, Muffy would be a good way to introduce. I'm Diane. So introduce yourself also. Use short, simple phrases and repeat information as needed. So keeping things short and asking one question at a time. And it's so easy to try and, that we ask 2 to 3 questions at a time because we think they haven't understood. But asking questions slowly. Speak slowly and clearly. Use a gentle and relaxed tone, and then patiently wait for a response. So, people with dementia have difficulty communicating, and we talk too quickly sometimes, so people can't keep up with us. And what they found is it takes 20 seconds before someone can respond. So I'm gonna, if I can get my phone to cooperate with me.
And my sister can't remember a name. She says, Dad, you know who I mean. You know them.
Yeah.
You know them good. Well, then I usually figure out it's the gal I had roomed with. And they live near her.
Okay, so I'm gonna start 20 seconds now. We'll count down. Okay, that was 20 seconds. How did that feel?
Long.
Painfully long.
Long, right? So it gives you an example of how long we have to really wait to communicate with folks. And if someone is having trouble communicating, during the conversation, you can provide a statement rather than a question. So sometimes it's helpful to people, instead of saying, do you need to go to the bathroom, to just say, here is the bathroom. That way they don't have to go through the decision-making process of coming up with the answer and then giving you the answer. Avoid big statements about something you want the person to do. So if you want them to put on a hat, say, here is the hat, as opposed to, you need to be warm to be able to go outside. Turn negatives into positives. So rather than saying, don't do that, let's do this. Then you're not confusing people. Giving visual cues, so if you want someone to brush their teeth, maybe do the motion of brushing your teeth, as opposed to explaining to people what you need them to do. And avoid quizzing statements like, do you remember when? That confuses people. And we think sometimes that's gonna trigger people's memories, and often that really just confuses them.
My mother told me, I asked her one time, do you remember something? And she looked at me and said, Muffy, I don't remember, and I'm tired. I'm just really tired of lying. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, because I don't want to have to say I remember when I don't. And so I just thought, wow, you know.
Good for her for
Good for her.
having
for
that,
saying that.
Yes.
just being able to express that.
So I don't.
Good for her.
ask
But
her
it's
that.
amazing what they, like, what I'm noticing from her past. She remembers when she was a little girl and there was a calf, and how rough the tongue of that calf was on when it licked her hand. And,
Small things.
yeah, just.
So that sensory stuff stays with people, definitely. And if a person is losing their communication skills, which happen, then use pictures or notes to be able to tell them what you'd like them to do. And if anything, you can offer a guess, but try and not put words in people's mouths. So, what are the 5 key messages? I'm gonna quiz you now. How did you do on the 5 key messages? Or I can help you out. So, dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Dementia is not just about having memory problems. It's possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. And there's more to the person than the dementia.
Diane, can you talk about delirium and how that's different from dementia?
Delirium, I'm not the expert on that, so, delirium is usually,
A temporary thing?
it can be temporary, but it can also be caused by a medication, it can be caused by, there's so many different things it can be caused by.
Okay.
So it's good to seek out a doctor if someone's not, it can be a UTI, I mean, there's so many things that can cause delirium that it's really good to have that medically checked out if someone's not, if they've been making sense one day and not making sense the next day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, I'm using my sister as an example. This is so cute. She was, well, she's told me this too, but I heard it from her daughter first, that mom thinks somebody's living with her. There's a guy living with him. And so Lori said, well, Mom, I hope he's good looking and rich. Then she said, I don't know. And she had really gotten confused, and Lori had kind of laughed, and she said, I don't know. And she said, do you think he's real? Yes, he is, because he wears a hat. Yes, he is, because he wears a hat. I thought that was the cutest thing I'd ever heard.
So now's time to think about what you in your life, what small action can you do to be more dementia friendly? And take out your little sheet of paper that I gave you, and you can write yourself a note. I'm not going to collect them, about what it is that you can do. staying in touch with someone who has dementia, I think, is probably the most important thing that we can do for both the person with dementia and the caregiver. Saying living with dementia as opposed to saying suffering with dementia. Smiling and saying hello for someone who has dementia. Sometimes just that acknowledgement is the biggest key. And then starting a conversation at work about dementia, maybe telling people about this presentation, that you learned some new things about dementia. That might be an action that you can take. So in our community, North Shore Area Partners is a place for you to get information and resources, and Shannon got some great resources here at the library for us. If you're looking for the end-all be-all on dementia, it's the Alzheimer's Association of North Dakota, Minnesota. Amazing website. It has all kinds of things from fact sheets to support groups, all kinds of ways that people can get involved with Alzheimer's. They, of course, just had their End to Walk Alzheimer's Walk this last week. So lots of fundraising in that activity too. And then the Senior Linkage Line is just a good Minnesota helpline that is really good for asking for resources and trying to get information.